Hello dear viewer, and thank you for joining me on day 47 of reading the Bible together. Today we are reading Leviticus chapter 5 and 6 from the Old Testament, as well as Matthew chapter 26, verse 26 to 46 from the New Testament. Let's start. Leviticus chapter 5. Cases requiring sin offerings. Sin offerings are required in the following cases. If you are officially summoned to give evidence in court and do not give information about something you have seen or heard, you must suffer the consequences. If you unintentionally touch anything ritually unclean, such as a dead animal, you are unclean and guilty as soon as you realize what you have done. If you unintentionally touch anything of human origin that is unclean, whatever it may be, you are guilty as soon as you realize what you have done. If you make a careless vow, no matter what it is about, you are guilty as soon as you realize what you have done. When you are guilty, you must confess the sin, and as the penalty for your sin, you must bring to the Lord a female sheep or goat as an offering. The priest shall offer the sacrifice for your sin. If you cannot afford a sheep or a goat, you shall bring to the Lord as the payment for your sin 2 doves or 2 pigeons, one for a sin offering and the other for a burnt offering. You shall bring them to the priest, who will first offer the bird for the sin offering. He will break its neck without pulling off its head, and sprinkle some of its blood against the side of the altar. The rest of the blood will be drained out at the base of the altar. This is an offering to take away sin. Then he shall offer the second bird as a burnt offering, according to the regulations. In this way, the priest shall offer the sacrifice for your sin, and you will be forgiven. If you cannot afford 2 doves or 2 pigeons, you shall bring 2 pounds of flour as a sin offering. You shall not put any olive oil or any incense on it, because it is a sin offering, not a grain offering. You shall bring it to the priest, who will take a handful of it as a token that it has all been offered to the Lord, and he will burn it on the altar as a food offering. It is an offering to take away sin. In this way the priest shall offer the sacrifice for your sin, and you will be forgiven. The rest of the flour belongs to the priest, just as in the case of a grain offering. Repayment offerings. The Lord gave the following regulations to Moses. If any of you sin unintentionally by failing to hand over the payments that are sacred to the Lord, you shall bring as your repayment offering to the Lord a male sheep or goat without any defects. Its value is to be determined according to the official standard. You must take the payments you have failed to hand over and must pay an additional 20%. You shall give it to the priest, and the priest shall offer the animal as a sacrifice for your sin, and you will be forgiven. If any of you sin unintentionally by breaking any of the Lord's commands, you are guilty and must pay the penalty. You must bring to the priest as a repayment offering a male sheep or goat without any defects. Its value is to be determined according to the official standard. The priest shall offer the sacrifice for the sin which you committed unintentionally, and you will be forgiven. It is a repayment offering for the sin you committed against the Lord. Leviticus chapter 6. The Lord gave the following regulations to Moses. An offering is to be made if any of you sin against the Lord by refusing to return what another Israelite has left as a deposit, or by stealing something from him, or by cheating him, or by lying about something that has been lost, and swearing that you did not find it. When you sin in any of these ways, you must repay whatever you got by dishonest means. On the day you are found guilty, you must repay the owner in full, plus an additional 20%. You shall bring to the priest as your repayment offering to the Lord a male sheep or goat without any defects. Its value is to be determined according to the official standard. The priest shall offer the sacrifice for your sin, and you will be forgiven. Sacrifices burnt whole. The Lord commanded Moses to give Aaron and his sons the following regulations for burnt offerings. A burnt offering is to be left on the altar all night long, and the fire is to be kept burning. Then the priest, wearing his linen robe and linen shorts, shall remove the greasy ashes left on the altar and put them at the side of the altar. Then he shall change his clothes and take the ashes outside the camp to a ritually clean place. The fire on the altar must be kept burning and never allowed to go out. Every morning the priest shall put firewood on it, arrange the burnt offering on it, and burn the fat of the fellowship offering. The fire must always be kept burning on the altar and never allowed to go out. Grain offerings. The following are the regulations for grain offerings. An Aaronite priest shall present the grain offering to the Lord in front of the altar. Then he shall take a handful of the flour and oil and the incense on it, and burn it on the altar as a token that all of it has been offered to the Lord. The odor of this offering is pleasing to the Lord. The priests shall eat the rest of it. It shall be made into bread, baked without yeast, and eaten in a holy place, the courtyard of the tent of the Lord's presence. The Lord has given it to the priests as their part of the food offerings. It is very holy, like the sin offerings and the repayment offerings. For all time to come, any of the male descendants of Aaron may eat it as their continuing share of the food offered to the Lord. Anyone else who touches a food offering will be harmed by the power of its holiness. The Lord gave Moses the following regulations for the ordination of an Aaronite priest. On the day he is ordained, he shall present as an offering to the Lord 2 pounds of flour, the same amount as the daily grain offering, half in the morning and half in the evening. It is to be mixed with oil and cooked on a griddle, and then crumbled and presented as a grain offering, an odor pleasing to the Lord. For all time to come, this offering is to be made by every descendant of Aaron who is serving as high priest. It shall be completely burnt as a sacrifice to the Lord. No part of grain offering that a priest makes may be eaten. All of it must be burnt. Sin offerings. The Lord commanded Moses to give Aaron and his sons the following regulations for sin offerings. The animal for a sin offering shall be killed on the north side of the altar, where the animals for the burnt offerings are killed. This is a very holy offering. The priest who sacrifices the animal shall eat it in a holy place, the courtyard of the tent of the Lord's presence. Anyone or anything that touches the flesh of the animal will be harmed by the power of its holiness. If any article of clothing is spattered with the animal's blood, it must be washed in a holy place. Any clay pot in which the meat is boiled must be broken, and if a metal pot is used, it must be scrubbed and rinsed with water. Any male of the priestly families may eat this offering. It is very holy. But if any of the blood is brought into the tent and used in the ritual to take away sin, the animal must not be eaten. It must be burnt. Please feel free to pause the video here for time to reflect on what we have read. Let's continue. Matthew chapter 26, verse 26 to 46. The Lord's Supper. While they were eating, Jesus took a piece of bread, gave a prayer of thanks, broke it, and gave it to his disciples. "Take and eat it," he said. "This is my body." Then he took a cup, gave thanks to God, and gave it to them. "Drink it, all of you," he said. "This is my blood, which seals God's covenant. My blood poured out for many for the forgiveness of sins. I tell you, I will never again drink this wine until the day I drink the new wine with you in my Father's kingdom." Then they sang a hymn and went out to the Mount of Olives. Jesus predicts Peter's denial. Then Jesus said to them, "This very night all of you will run away and leave me, for the scripture says, God will kill the shepherd, and the sheep of the flock will be scattered. But after I am raised to life, I will go to Galilee ahead of you." Peter spoke up and said to Jesus, "I will never leave you, even though all the rest do." Jesus said to Peter, "I tell you that before the rooster crows tonight, you will say 3 times that you do not know me." Peter answered, "I will never say that, even if I have to die with you." And all the other disciples said the same thing. Jesus prays in Gethsemane. Then Jesus went with his disciples to a place called Gethsemane, and he said to them, "Sit here while I go over there and pray." He took with him Peter and the 2 sons of Zebedee. Grief and anguish came over him, and he said to them, "The sorrow in my heart is so great that it almost crushes me. Stay here and keep watch with me." He went a little farther on, threw himself face downward on the ground, and prayed, "My Father, if it is possible, take this cup of suffering from me. Yet not what I want, but what you want." Then he returned to the 3 disciples and found them asleep, and he said to Peter, "How is it that you 3 were not able to keep watch with me for even 1 hour? Keep watch and pray that you will not fall into temptation. The spirit is willing, but the flesh is weak." Once more Jesus went away and prayed, "My Father, if this cup of suffering cannot be taken away unless I drink it, your will be done." He returned once more and found the disciples asleep. They could not keep their eyes open. Again Jesus left them, went away, and prayed the 3rd time, saying the same words. Then he returned to the disciples and said, "Are you still sleeping and resting? Look, the hour has come for the Son of Man to be handed over to the power of sinners. Get up, let us go. Look, here is the man who is betraying me." Please feel free to pause the video here for time to reflect on what we have read. That's it for today, and I hope that you'll join me in the next video. Wishing you a graceful morning, day, or evening.